I just thought today that I would come out to the countryside and talk about dyslexia. I got diagnosed with dyslexia near the end of college. I always thought that there was something not quite right, but I always attributed it to the hearing problems I had when I was younger, and I never really had a problem with reading. I've always loved reading, and because of that I thought I would definitely not have dyslexia, because at the time that's what I thought dyslexia was, just an ability not to read. I now know that's completely not the case. Dyslexia is treated on a case-by-case basis and is different for almost everyone. For me, it affects my mental math abilities, so recalling things quickly. So I can do the logical, theoretical maths behind them. However, it takes me a little bit longer to process the information and be able to recall that information. So I have the ability in my mind to do the maths fine. However, it might take me a little bit longer to learn something and also to recall it. So this is really evident when I try to learn times tables, and I've always been terrible at them. And at the time, I always just put it down to stupidity. I thought I was an idiot. But I now know obviously that wasn't the case. I mean, I'm at university, I just finished my degree doing robotics, and that is heavily maths. Definitely shows that it's not intelligence, it's just a mental disability. This also affects me in my general long-term memory, so I'll forget where I put things, I'll forget people's names very easily, and dates just don't stick in my mind. Although that isn't directly attributed to dyslexia, it uses similar processes. Although I really enjoy reading, it was evident from my dyslexia test that I actually do struggle with reading. I've just loved it and persevered with it, and my mind has developed strategies in order to counteract the dyslexia. So I'll reread words without even thinking. In social and speech, this can be quite difficult because it's quite a high pressure situation you're in when you're talking to someone. You have to call and process information very quickly, so a lot of the time people do tend to struggle with social interactions, and I definitely think that's the case with me as well, but this doesn't stop me from having amazing friends. I took quite a lot of strength from knowing that nearly 10% of the world has dyslexia. Big names are up there who had dyslexia. Einstein, Walt Disney, Picasso, they all had dyslexia, but they've gone on to do incredible things, so you can never think of it as a way to hold you back. So it's only quite recently that people have started to study dyslexia, because the mind is so complex and there's so much we just don't know. The word dyslexia comes from the Greek for loss of words. I totally get that. When it was first being diagnosed, it was mainly for reading and spelling, but it's believed that this is because it's a very cognitively demanding task, and it really highlights those kind of difficulties. Quite recently there was an article from MIT that explained that the plasticity of the brain has a large impact on dyslexia. Brain plasticity is its ability to change to new things, so you can see how this deeply affects learning. However, I find comfort in this, as it scientifically proves that it's a disability inside the mind and not a measure of intelligence. The most important thing to note if you have dyslexia is it should never hold you back. Going along the lines of education, there is funding out there to help anyone with disability, and that includes dyslexia. The DSA are the ones who give out funding for that kind of thing. The way this works for dyslexia is you talk to an assessor and you work out together what items would be best fitted to your case. For me, I got a dictaphone for auditory help because I find that I have to re-listen to the same phrase a few times before I truly understand it, and you can't get that when you're in the middle of a lecture. Alongside the dictaphone, I also got Dragon Naturally Speaking. This is a software that converts the audio into text, and I've found that it does that surprisingly well. This doesn't just apply to audio recordings from the dictaphone, you can also record directly into the app and dictate to it like you would write down a document. Also got a printer, which I use to lay out all the information around me so that I can visually place memories of various facts that I need to know, and that way a memory is in a location that I can keep in my head rather than just a bit of text on a screen. Now, as well as this, in university I found particularly helpful is extra time. In the dyslexia assessment, they tend to recommend the amount of time required. The standard is 20 minutes, and that's what I get. If you find things particularly difficult, you can get more time. It's always done on a case-by-case basis. This extra time is really useful for someone with dyslexia, especially with the reading element, because you are rereading things or reading a little bit slower. You're at a great disadvantage compared to anyone else taking the exam. So those 20 minutes on every hour really help to make sure I'm reading everything clearly and not just skipping ahead and completely missing the point. An important note if you think you have dyslexia is that assessments are free at like the college age, but once you go into university they count you as an adult and you can no longer receive free assessment. So I managed to get in just before the deadline, as it was just the end of college when I got assessed for myself, but I'm so glad that I did, and it really helped for university. I found that my auditory processing is the best thing I can rely on to counteract dyslexia. So a lot of the time when I'm trying to process something, I'll break it down into an auditory element. So I'll turn it to a rhyme or a song, just trying to convert that difficult cognitive task into a simple auditory task that my brain can easily understand. I find that mind maps are really helpful for laying out all the information, and then I only remember the key points, and those key points are then connected to everything else. So I just have to remember a few small things, and then I can immediately branch off and remember everything else. And I think this brings up a good point. The best way to deal with dyslexia is just to break down any problem into its smallest point, and you do that without dyslexia. There's just more need for that kind of thing when you have dyslexia. So I made this video to explain dyslexia and also to help anyone who has dyslexia. All the research I did for this video can be found in links in the description below. So I hope you've enjoyed watching. Please leave a comment down below of any of your thoughts on dyslexia, as well as any tips or tricks that you may have that help you learn. But if you have any more questions about dyslexia, don't hesitate to ask. I will see you again next time I have something else I want to talk about. Goodbye.